I've clicked onto the global tropical overview for July the 23rd, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, the vortex pressure are mine alone. If you're going to make any decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look to the local office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. We have the same two tropical systems active in the West Pacific today. Just a brief mention of Tropical Storm Praporoon, which I hope I'm saying that name correctly, just off the coast of northern Vietnam this morning. The system is getting pretty heavily shear, as we talked about it would. We've got a lot of strong northeasterly winds aloft coming across this region, and any convection that this storm blows up is just getting sheared downstream, which in this case is over northern Vietnam and portions of northern Laos. And this is going to be really the main impact from the system. It's going to be heavy rainfall and localized flooding issues. The movement is going to be pretty slow as the system sits here off coast or just barely comes ashore into Vietnam. But it could still pack some winds, especially along the coast of Vietnam. This could be still having winds maybe upwards of 50 knots, which could still cause some power outage issues. So stay safe as the system does come through. Now, the main system we're talking about today is Typhoon Gaemi, which I still hope I'm saying the name correctly, which is now coming north of the latitude of Luzon in the Philippines. And now we're getting to the part of the forecast where we're getting closer to Japan and Taiwan, the southern Japanese islands, to be more specific there. And the system is now showing signs of less struggle from wind shear that we've had over the past couple of days. When I last made my video, the system had developed an eye, it looked like, on microwave imagery, and it had a pretty good structure going for itself, but it wasn't able to sustain itself because the wind shear was simply too strong for that kind of a structure to sustain. And over the past couple of days since that video, the storm has really been struggling to close off an eye wall ever since. But we're starting to see signs now that this shear is decreasing. If you look north of Vietnam, you can see, not Vietnam, Taiwan, I keep messing up those two countries. You can see that we have an upper low placed north of Taiwan, and this is bringing a lot of westerly flow right into the storm. But what it's also doing is weakening the part of the upper ridge that's been bringing the system easterly shear for the past couple of days. And we're now getting expansive outflow on the north side. We talked about this happening around this time. And this is helping to decrease that easterly shear. And the impact of that can be seen if we pause this at the end of the loop and we zoom in to take a closer look at this convection now. It's very pixelated, I know, but you can still get a semblance of what's happening here. You've got this band of textured cloud tops curling in a counterclockwise fashion into the center of the storm. And this is now getting close to being fully circling around the center, which is probably around here. And this is another attempt of the storm of trying to build an eye or eye wall. And you can see on a microwave pass this just happening. This was about, let's see, maybe 4 hours ago, and you can see this curved band wrapping around and the center about here. Now, this is a bit low resolution. We did get an earlier microwave pass that had suggested that a mid-level eye had already formed. It doesn't look like it's fully sustaining itself right now. This does not look like, even with the lower resolution, this would still be an eye, but it was still an attempt, and we're seeing this continue on infrared imagery. You can see if I pause this one at the end, we have much more of a curved band look, sort of like a shrimp, like I talked about a couple days ago, now around the center of this storm. Now, there is still some imperfections within the center. If you look again at microwave, I'll highlight where the mid-level center is. If we switch over to the low-level view, it's hard to tell exactly because of the low resolution, but it looks like the low-level center is maybe about here, a little bit offset to the north of the mid-level center. So we're still seeing some tilt. Now, having said that, compared to this microwave pass, which I'll highlight this eye, this has definitely made a lot of progress, where you can see there was a much more significant tilt with height earlier today. This was about 2 hours prior to the other microwave pass. So the tilt is getting better, another indication that shear is weakening. And once that tilt fixes itself, and once we get the system to finally build off an eye with that stacked vortex, then we can see that system intensify much more quickly. And that's still the anticipation right now by a lot of models. And you can see that on the H-Wharf. You can see right now it sees this pattern of the low-level center being here, mid-level center being a bit offset to the south with height. But if we go in time, you'll see that eventually they become vertically stacked. It does not take long for that to happen. And we see rapid deepening take place as the system approaches either the southern Japanese islands or Taiwan. Now, there's still a little bit of wiggle room on exactly where we're going to get these storms centered to actually come. But right now, this general area from, say, central coast of Taiwan over to the island of, say, Ishigaki, that's probably about where we're going to see the storm come through. That's like the general cone of uncertainty if I were to draw a rough one up right now. Now, there is still some shear impacting the system. And I sort of alluded to it earlier with that upper low. If we look at the visible imagery, which is the closer visible imagery, what you'll notice is if pay attention to the western side of the storm. So here's your convection curling in. Here's the center. And here's on the west side, we've got all this convection getting their top sheared off towards the east, towards the storm. This is some flow from that upper level low, which you can see better on water vapor. Here's your low. Here's your westerly flow coming right into the western CDO of our storm. Now, models have not done overly well capturing this. Now, it's hard to say exactly how strong this shear is, but if we look at the H-Wharf upper level wind, we can see that this upper level ridge is still in place, and this is mainly bringing a southerly flow on the western side of our storm. We don't really have a great expanse on the model of this westerly flow from the southern side of this upper low coming into the west side of the storm. And a few soundings that I took on this western side confirms that, because mostly in the mid to upper levels, those soundings showed northerly flow, which would be indicative of this upper high mainly having dominance in that flow. But we can see on satellite imagery that that's not overly true, at least in some parts of the atmosphere. We still have some flow out of the west on the west side of this convection. Now, again, it's a bit hard to tell exactly how strong this shear is, and only time will tell to see exactly if this has any effect on the convection. But one thing it could do is, now that the system has managed to wrap up shear on the east side, now the up shear side is on the west side because of the shear pushing in, and this could make the system struggle a bit to wrap this in on the west side. We'll see what happens in time, though, and importantly, this low is not going to be shearing the system for all too long. You can see on this H-Wharf run, this begins to cut off and then back southwest of the system. And as I mentioned a couple days ago, this has been found in studies to be fairly favorable for developing and intensifying tropical cyclones. You can sort of see why, where right now the outflow, it's pretty good. We've got a fairly good outflow channel towards the north and to the south, but we had opened up an additional outflow channel off towards the north and west as well, alongside these other outflow channels. So now you have 3 channels like that, and this is very favorable and fairly low shear. Because this low is now favoring all this upper level divergence, and now with the system becoming more on the eastern side of this low, the flow from this low is becoming more southerly rather than more westerly, and that's aligned with where it's going. Now, there will still be some shear existing here, as the flow with a deep layer ridge further east is not fully symmetric, I guess is a way of saying it. You can see this if you look at the 500 millibar height plot. This is showing you flow in the mid-levels. We have this upper ridge, or mid-level ridge here east, and we've got 2 centers draped kind of south of Japan. It is kind of being broken apart a bit, and it is not a full, say, smooth ridge like this fully that would be steering the system out of the south. This is coming in, if you follow the wind barbs, a bit like this, and then it bows out and noses out further north. And this is also why it's turning towards the northwest. But the reason this little curve in makes a bit of a difference is because now you're decreasing slightly a little bit of that southerly flow in the mid-levels. And if we look at the low-level flow, which I need to open that plot up again, this ridge is now much more smooth. It's not really bowing in. It's more just smooth here. So this has a bit of a stronger southerly flow being imparted upon the storm. And soundings have shown that this is creating a little bit of moderate speed shear, as it's called. Now, exactly how much of an impact is this going to have on the system? It's a bit uncertain. One thing that the storm has going in its favor is it's a bit larger, being a monsoonal development, or coming from a monsoon trough is what I mean by that. And broader systems can tend to be a bit more resilient to moderate wind shear compared to smaller storms. So it's not guaranteed that this shear is going to be fully detrimental to the system, but it could be something that could hold it back a little bit. Now, even with that, models like the H4, like I just showed you, do still show this system rapidly deepening, and the current expectation is that we're going to see a fairly quick ramp up in winds before this does come into the southern Japanese islands or Taiwan. And you can see that in the current Joint Typhoon Warning Center forecast with a very quick ramp up. Right now, only about 70 knot winds in the center, and as we get to landfall time in Taiwan or the southern Japanese islands, nearly a Category 3 equivalent on the Saffir-Simpson scale, and that would be the 24th. Look at the calendar. That would be Thursday afternoon local time in these regions. Now, again, like I said earlier, there's a bit of wiggle room on exactly where this is going to come in. If you're in the southern Japanese islands, I'd say all the way up to Ishigaki, and maybe a few points east of there. Still take this seriously. As you can see, one, the wind field still expands out there, but there's still potential that the system does bow out and come your way, and that could still be a significant hit to you all. Now, as well, in central Taiwan, if the cone does shift away from you, like this current one shows a landfall, if it shifts further north in the next few forecasts, don't take your guard down completely. Make sure it's still up just in case the system does still take that last minute turn and come into central Taiwan. And for China, I know this is looking like a good forecast for you, because if the system does come into Taiwan, we'll be looking at the system weakening quite a bit from the high topography. But keep in mind, a weakened storm does broaden out a lot, so we'll get a lot of water being pushed onto this part of the coastline, and we could have a lot of storm surge flooding here along the east coast of China. And also, if it does come through these southern Japanese islands and misses the high topography in Taiwan, you could be looking at a stronger storm. This storm could have maybe a little bit more time to intensify before it does come ashore in the eastern China. This is a very serious storm to take very seriously. Make sure preparations are being rushed to completion. Again, this is Thursday afternoon when the system is coming in. So you've got about 2 days before the system comes in. So preferably have your preparations done by, say, tonight or tomorrow morning, and you should be good. And make sure you're listening to local weather offices and local emergency management for the best information on what you can do to prepare and stay safe as the system comes through. That's all that I've got for today. Stay safe, and I'll have more videos throughout the week as the system progresses north. And that's all that I've got for today. So thanks for watching.